Hello, and what I'm doing now is I am working on figuring out the questions, the testing questions for the study I'm doing, examining children's different learning in different genres. So when it comes to testing, what I have to figure out is what my dependent variables are, and those are the outcomes that we're measuring. And I want it to be the words that we've embedded within the books, which I showed you last time, and the knowledge embedded in the books, and then whether they're generalizing that knowledge to new situations. I think. Do I want it to be that, or do I want to combine the last two? So if I only test generalization, then that'll show, like, they have to remember it in order to get to the generalization piece, right? You can't skip to the generalization piece. So if I just test generalization, that will mean that they're learning it. But if they don't generalize it, but they do remember it, that's still something interesting. So I should probably have that. So in that case, it is going to be the 3 tests. So there you go. There's that puzzle worked out. Because if they aren't able to do generalization, but they are able to do the memory part, then that's a useful piece of information for me, right? So I have to design those questions. So the first step is designing those questions and then figuring out how we're going to present it to the kids, because these kids are, of course, far too young for us to, like, give them a survey. Like, that's not a real thing. So the first part of this is actually done, testing the vocabulary that's embedded in it. Here I can show you. I apologize for my messy screen here, but you can see here, real straightforward. I have already existing vocabulary tests with nonsense words in it. We start with some practice items. So the way I set this up is I have a little script that the RA is going to use, so it's the same every single time. I'll edit this now. I haven't actually edited this yet. And then we have some practice ones, so kids learn about how to point, essentially, what we're trying to do. And you give them feedback if they're correct and feedback if they're incorrect. And then after, we'll test them on just the 4 new words that we're introducing. And there's no feedback provided on that. And that's because it becomes a less successful test when you give feedback to it. It introduces more bias. So this is essentially what this is going to look like. So now my job is going to be, one other thing to point out, the way these are phrased, these are actually phrased really carefully to say point to the ice cream instead of can you show me the ice cream, or which one's the ice cream, anything like that. Again, we want it to be consistent. And also there's some research that actually shows kids do better if they have a declarative sentence rather than a question. So point to whatever is the phrase we're going to use, and that's what we're going to use consistently through all of it. Okay, so my next step is to figure out then how to test their knowledge, whether they remember the facts that were included in the books, and whether they remember and whether they can then generalize those. Okay, I'll be back when I have worked those out. Okay, so I think I have figured out how we're going to test their background knowledge. Now, it's going to be a little bit tricky, or the knowledge that they've learned from this. So, like I said, I'm going to do it 2 ways, basically their literal knowledge and then their inferencing of that knowledge. So let me show you what I have done. Okay, so this would be for the literal knowledge. And the way I basically set this up is that what we'll do is we'll have pictures showing a wug-like creature in different scenarios. And the one that best matches would be the one they would point to. So the prompt every time is going to be point to the wug. And then there'll be different pictures. So here's like sort of a mock-up I've done, which is not going to be the final product because I need an artist to do this properly. But basically, if we had something that looked like a wug, but like curled up in a hive versus curled up in like a traditional bed versus curled up in a nest, if kids remember that wugs sleep in hives, then when I say point to the wug, they should be able to determine that it's the one in the hive, not the one in the bed or in the nest. But in the situation, they would all look basically similar to how the wugs look. But the idea then is, can they literally remember what wugs do, essentially? And what we'll probably do is, instead of having these random ones, they probably will be ones from the story. Okay, so that's going to be their literal knowledge. And then from there, I think I have worked it out in terms of their inductive inferencing, what I'm going to have them do is I'll show first a picture from the book that just says something like wugs sleep in hives, and then a new version of a wug. Does this wug sleep in a hive? Does this wug sleep in a hive? Etc. And then ones that should not be, so this information should be generalized. That new version of a wug, probably something that looks like this, it should sleep in a hive, and other versions of wugs should sleep in hives, whereas they should not wear snow pants. Those are things that shouldn't be generalized. So I have it worked out. So we have a total of 8 of these, so 4 of them are ones that should be generalized and 4 of them are ones that shouldn't. And I'm gonna make some more, so we end up with a total of 16. So we have all the things that should be generalized and then just a bunch of things that shouldn't. And so because of course the information book won't have things like wugs and stripes, the narrative books are gonna show wugs that wear stripes because that happens often in narrative books. But in this one, it won't have that. So that's why we're gonna show a picture of a wug wearing stripes. I don't know. We'll see. I think this will work out.